Let's hear first from the shadows from the different political groups, getting started by Mr. Engel. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we are finally getting there. We have not only the report in its draft version on the table, but also a not unsubstantial number of amendments, which, when you look through them, sort of continue to reflect the seriousness and the constructive approach that most of us have had all through this process. This, of course, does not hide, and it could not hide, the differences in outlook on a number of issues, which are going to be the crucial element of the forthcoming talks. Should I call them negotiations? I'll call them talks for now on compromise amendment avenues and possibilities. I'd want to say a few words on this outlook issue, and of course I would also not want to hide my own outlook on matters. I've myself handed in quite a number of these deletion amendments that the rapporteur has mentioned, and I'll explain why. First of all, as we have ended up in a situation where at the end of the day time was relatively short, both for the presentation of the report, but then especially for the presentation of amendments, it was not possible to, as I would have liked to do, take out 50 paragraphs and propose a fully fledged alternative formulation for consideration of colleagues. And then again, we're not proposing 7 alternative reports, we're working on the one. So one of my motivations for submitting quite a number of deletion amendments was to say this can be said, it can be said in this way, it could also not be said. Now let's find out what is possible in between. This is a clear offer, and I've said this to the rapporteur myself, to look at these issues again. I am completely aware that on quite a number of paragraphs where I have brazenly suggested deletions, there are alternative formulations. And these alternative formulations, these additions, these precisions and all of that could be things that I could perfectly well live with, which means that there would be no need to maintain the host of deletion amendments that are now on the table. But I'll answer immediately to the rapporteur on his question of why would you delete something that is self-evident? And my answer is precisely because it is self-evident. And because it's self-evident suggests something that I might not want to suggest, whereas other people might want to suggest, and we'll have to get back to that. If you list, not once but quite a number of times, all the constituent elements of what a functioning democracy is, this is fine, and we all know what a functioning democracy is. But I don't believe that with respect to a member state of the European Union, in which nobody so far has suggested that democracy has expired, you would have to eternally recall that it is supposed to be a functioning democracy. This is why, on this and on a number of other accounts, I've suggested deletion. This does not mean that I don't believe in it, but it seems to me so self-evident that we do believe in it, that it doesn't make sense to state and restate it again, and thereby to suggest that the specific country, the specific place that we're talking about, has left the democratic path. I would also want, if that is possible, to bring in the desire of my political group to focus on crucial elements, and that explains a number of other deletions. And then I would say, and this has to do with factual and the developing nature of the whole issue, there is, of course, the issue of interpretation. There remains the issue of interpretation. And I'm sorry, I am taking this issue of interpretation seriously. Some things have been interpreted in a way by European institutions, by other governments, by parliaments, by independent observers, if I can call them that. And the Hungarian government has never failed to provide its own interpretation and outlook on things, and the way in which it says it intends things to be understood. And I believe we have to give credit to the author of such explanations for what they say, for what they write, and for what they intend. And this is why I would ask that it be considered that a number of things need not necessarily be formulated the way they are. I repeat, there are quite a number of areas where alternative formulations, additions, precisions have been brought in instead of deletions. Let's work on that and see and see where we end up. And I'll conclude this first round by the outlook of the report. You all know that it's not my intention as EPP shadow on this to be of a particular hindrance, but I'm aware that we might end up in a situation where, of course, also for reasons of political belonging, things might not be as easy as one would want them to be. But still, I believe this is a text in which we have the chance, and with which we have the chance, and I know this is of interest to the rapporteur and not only to him, to establish a European outlook on constitution making, on constitutional drafting and on constitutional practice, more than to stigmatize any one given national practice that we have now, due to circumstances, been brought to examine. There are the things on which the European Commission has been active, and we have to take note, and I am the first to do that the European Commission, I would not say is always right, but that the European Commission has a certain role, and that the Commission has to fulfill that role, and that the fulfillment of this role cannot be brought into doubt by anyone. But then there is political appreciation, and on political appreciation, I would say that it is preferable to adopt an attitude in which we suggest instead of threaten, in which we invite rather than suggest to force, and in which, at the end of the day, we would aim at using this particular instance in which we've been brought together for the purposes of this report, to develop a European perspective on things for which, so far, beyond the treaty's articles and beyond the values that we always refer to, we really don't concretely know what we have been talking about. And if we might achieve that, and if we might achieve to get to a true European outlook on what a constitution should be, how it should function, what majorities should be, and so on and so forth, in terms of suggestions for all of us, we'll get somewhere. Because, and this is my concluding remark, this may be a report about Hungary. And it is a report about Hungary. But in quite a number of cases, and it's not an unsubstantial number of cases, things we have singled out as matters of concern, things that have been singled out as matters of concern, would be matters of concern in many more countries than Hungary. And because that is so, it is the overall European outlook, the concrete translation of views into a common practice that makes more sense, to my view and to my mind, than the mere stigmatization of anything individual. I've tried to be halfway philosophical, but then this is a topic which brings me to be so. I've also been too long, which is where I stop now. I keep looking forward to working with you on getting this through. Thank you.